Top of the morning, everyone. Yes, it's Tshidi here again. I have no idea what's happening. I tried to do this in the best way possible, but for some reason, also my lights in the back are flickering. Um, it hasn't been a great start so far. So, yeah, okay. Back and back and back and back. Top of the morning. Can you guys hear me? Apologies for the delay. I had to go through another streaming platform because unfortunately the one that I created earlier started creating some problems for me. So yeah, I'll speak to Ecamm to see what could have been the problem. So yeah, top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning. Hello everyone. Hello, 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 hello. Hope you guys can hear me. I'm gonna try and see if I can also hear myself a bit because last week I think, oh yeah, my audio was horrible in the last session that I had, but I'm seeing that at least there is a few people that are saying they can hear me. That is fantastic. I hope also the sound is not too low. Hello, Eric. Hello, Sean. Amanda. Eric and I met in one of the Echem Live sessions that we had a few days ago. And I tried to implement everything, Eric, that they said we should. But for some reason, I couldn't go live with Ecamm. I had to go with Restream. So just some strange things happening. William, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, man. So today's topic is a very simple one. Simple, maybe, but not really simple. Because it's a topic that we all know and we hold very dearly, which is basically going through interviews. And in today's session, I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus a bit more on the second and the final round interviews, mainly because I've had some people saying, listen, I couldn't make it, or I didn't get the job, or, I didn't get everything to work at the right time when I was going through these interviews. How do I prepare for second round interviews? That's a question that a lot of people do ask. And I think we take it lightly as recruiters that some people know some of the basic processes that you need to follow when it comes to second round interviews. So I decided, you know what, let's just talk about it. Let's actually talk about what second round interviews and what you need to actually think about when it comes to preparing for second round interviews. And like I said, guys, the nice thing about these sessions is that you're able to share some of your comments, some of your questions that you might have about second round interviews. And what I'm also very keen to hear about is some of the questions that you guys have received. I'm sure you've received some really strange questions when it comes to interview processes. And it would be nice to hear what you guys have actually received so that I can tell you whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense. But yeah, today's, as I try to do every Tuesday, is to just try and share as much possible information as possible. Yes, that's true, Eric. Sometimes, things happen when it comes to live streams. But yeah, the life of a live streamer, I'm trying to do this in the best way possible. But before I actually start taking some of the questions that you guys might have, I've decided that maybe I should just put in some of the basic principles of how you need to actually prepare when it comes to second round or final round interviews. Um, I'll repeat this halfway through the process so that for some of the people that might have missed the session can actually come back and actually listen to what I was saying. So there are a few things that you need to do. So from a first round interview, remember the following: the first round interview, you do the research about the company. So first round is always about research, research, and research. So you need to do as much research about the company. What does the company do? What are they into? What makes them successful? All these things. You need to do so much research. Go onto their LinkedIn pages, go onto the news articles, whether there's been news that's been published about them. Do some of that research. Second thing is research about the role, even the panel that will be interviewing you. Now, researching about the role, and I think this one is always very interesting because some people are saying, but I've been a recruiter all these years, why should I research about the role? Now, you find that some companies they do certain jobs very differently. So you might be used to being a recruiter in your current company, but in the company that you might be going to, they're looking at recruiters more as sources than anything else. So that's why we always say do as much research about the role itself as possible, because that will definitely help you quite a lot. The third thing is research about the industry, especially if it is outside of your current industry. Now, for a lot of people, I think it's easier to say, yeah, no, I know this and I know this. But if you're coming from manufacturing or FMCG space and you're moving into banking, those industries are very different. Some of the requirements in that particular space are very different. Some of the certifications that you might need to have is also very different. So do a bit of research about the new industry that you're going into. The fourth thing is your first interview is a fact-finding mission. As much as you are in the first interview to be interviewed by the panel, it is also very important to understand that you're also there to interview the company about what you've done research on. So don't just go into first round interview and just think, okay, I'm just going to be there to answer my questions. You're also there to try and do as much research as possible. So that's the fourth thing that you need to think about. The fifth thing is gather enough about the company to be able to fill in the blanks in that first round interview. So you collect as much information on the first round interview because remember, you're interviewing them. Certain things that have been written about the companies, things about their values, things about this, you now trying to find out if those things are true, and you gather enough information to fill in some of the things that you didn't understand. Fill in the blanks about the company. Lastly, use your first round interview to prepare for your second round interview. So at any given time, your first round interview is step one to the next interview. So always make sure that you use that as a next step to that. So if you guys have questions, please start putting them into the live stream so that as soon as I finished speaking to you guys about what you need to then do for second round interview, I can start answering some of these questions that you might have. We do have quite a number of people that have actually joined in, and I'm so excited because I think we're sitting on 47 on LinkedIn. I'm not quite sure how many we're sitting on YouTube, but so far so good. The next steps that you need to worry about, this is now a second round interview. Research the new panel the same way that you research the first panel. So the reason why you research the panel that's going to interview you guys is that you need to sometimes see what are some of the icebreakers that you can use. You might find that the person came from the same school, or came from the same country, studied with in the same year as your brother or any one of the relatives that you might have. It becomes such a nice little icebreaker when it comes to the next interview. However, I always say before your interview, please don't try and start connecting with people before you've actually established the relationship with them, especially if you know they're going to interview you. Unless if you literally want to connect because there's not enough information being shown about that individual. Second thing is listen to the questions being asked. This is the second round or final round interview. Listen to the questions that you've been asked and not what you think the panel wants to hear. Because I think the mistake that we make is that interviews are really scary. Interviews can get you really scared and worried about this and that. It's very, very important that in that session is that you listen to exactly what question they're asking you, because that will help you in how you answer, those people going forward. Because if you end up answering what you think they want to hear, you end up missing out on the opportunity to actually be able to showcase your ability to listen and give back feedback. Third thing, revisit your notes and eliminate what is not fact. Because what you don't want to do is certain things might have happened in the company. And because remember I said first round is a fact-finding mission, you then ask certain questions about things that they've done, or I hear the company was bought over by so-and-so, and you find out that deal fell through, it's no longer happening. Now, in your notes, at least you could be able to say, okay, based on what I've done, or in the last discussion with Martin or Eric or whoever it is, I found out that this company wasn't bought over. Is there any reason why the deal didn't go through? Then you can use the notes that you used from the previous interview to make sure that you prepare for the next interview. And remember, guys, everything that you hear in the first round interview is extremely important for the next round of interviews. So don't just take the notes and then throw away the book and prepare again as if you've never met anybody, because it's very, very important that whoever you've met, use the notes that you've actually captured in that previous session. Fourth thing, do more precise research, because remember you have found out one or two things that you are not quite sure about. You now go to do a bit more precise research about certain things that might not necessarily have been available at the time because you didn't know where to search, but because you had first round, now you know there's a final round and you do a bit more research about some of that. And remember, guys, final round interviews can come in different formats. It could come in a format where you're literally just purely having coffee. It could be a coffee conversation. You could be visiting the company's offices, anything that could be a final round interview. Number 5, prepare the same way that you did for the first round. The mistake that people tend to make is that they tend to think, okay, no, I've done enough research in the first round, so I'm done. And then you put your notes away until your second round. No, no, no. Go back to the notes, eliminate what wasn't fact, and then add what you think is actually fact. But you prepare the exact same way that you prepared for the previous round. That is very, very important that you actually do that. Please don't make a mistake of putting the notes away and just throwing them away, because that's not gonna work to your advantage. And then I think it's the sixth one, have a more targeted questions and always referencing what you've learned in the first round interview. This is very, very important because you're able to show people that, you know what, I did listen in the first round interview, have a bit more targeted way of doing things. And then second round interview does not mean you've got the job, or final round interview does not always mean that you've got the job. Because what it means is that there could be another candidate also in the process that you're being compared to. So it's not a done deal until you've actually signed the dotted line. So that's how you prepare for final round or second round interview, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back to the comments that are already coming through to make sure that I actually answer some of those questions. But yeah, like I said, it's always nice to see some of the people that have actually joined. And thank you so much for joining me in this little lovely discussion. And I haven't seen many people on YouTube yet, because I'm sure that without being able, except for Eric, who's now finally on that side, we're able to now see that there's some comments. Okay, cool. I'm going to start with Armanda. I'm going to try and share what it says so that I can read it out without, sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about. So this is always my intro for candidates, that it's your chance to also get to know as much as you can about the company and make an informed decision should the role be offered to you. And that is very important. And I think that's one of the things that people forget, that session is also your session. So yes, people ask you questions about your experience. What have you done? What have you not done? But it's also very, very important that going forward, you use that session to also try and check if you can gather as much information as possible. I'm just going to reduce this because, as you can see, it's just going over, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that it stays within the frame and you guys can see who's actually asking the questions. And I'm going to drop it down a bit so that at least you guys are able to see the comments, and then I'm also able to read them. But yeah, and it's actually quite true from what Amanda's saying. And then the next question is, why do you think people lose out an opportunity after second round interviews and a coffee chat with the senior person? With the senior person changed everything. So I think one of the reasons why people lose out on interviews after the first or second round interview is, what we've realized is that in some cases, people take the brake off the accelerator, or people stop doing the research about the company. And then you'll find that in some of the scenarios in the second round interview or the final round interviews, you repeat the same things that were incorrect in the first round interview. Coffee discussions are also one of those things that people end up losing out a lot on, because in some cases you'll find that some people end up thinking that, I don't have to impress them anymore. I'm on the final round interview. I'm the only candidate. What they forget is that sometimes there's two of you in the process, and the other person ends up actually performing a lot better in that second round interview. Any other questions, guys? Please don't forget to share some of your questions. If I lose out on the stream, please also do let me know, because like I said, I really don't want to lose out on some of the stream. And shout out to a few guys that have come through as well. Ole Bureng says, what's up? Hello, Ole Bureng. Hope you're good. And then the other thing that says, maybe it should stop being called coffee chats, as it gives candidates the impressions that they made it through. But the fact is that it's still the final round interview. Now, in most cases, it actually is purely a coffee chat. And I think one of the things, and I'll give you an example. So one of the things that we always say to candidates is, there's been scenarios, for example, where you come to a company and the first people that you actually deal with is the receptionists. Whether they're there, they meet you in the corridors and you're asking for water, you're asking for whatever. Those are normally the first people. People make a mistake of sometimes being very rude to those people. What they don't realize is that those people are also part of the company, they're part of our culture. And if you're actually rude to them, in some cases they'll tell us, they say, yo, this person wasn't very nice. I tried to offer them water. They were just rude to me and they didn't do that. As much as we might not consider that to be an interview, but that is still an interview, because how you treat our employees is how we would like you to treat everybody else, regardless of their power and their position. So don't treat somebody badly because you're thinking it's not the interview, because in most cases it is. I've got a story of this awesome guy, a friend of mine, who I think he moved to Singapore. I'm not going to tell you the company, but those that know him will know exactly who I'm talking about. So there was a time when we actually used to hire graduates from university in this particular company that I used to work for. And one day he came, sat in the waiting room with the rest of the people, and just sat there and had conversations with these guys. And these were people that were actually supposed to get interviewed. He sat with them, had nice conversations, this and that. How are you feeling? No, I'm very worried. I'm nervous. I'm this, I'm that. And what was actually quite nice is that in that very, very informal session, he was able to see the people that have got the love for helping and for helping others. And in the next session, after that, he literally said to them, hey, listen, dude, let's go. It's our time for our interview because now it's past. Let's go for the interview. And the guy's like, but wait, you were just sitting here with me chatting about everything and what I'm nervous about, and you've been my interviewer the whole time. And it was easier for that candidate to actually get the job because of the fact that they ended up realizing that that person was just generally just a nice person, regardless of who they are. So don't be rude to people. It doesn't matter whether it's people at the gate or whoever it is. Everybody needs to be treated with the same level of respect that we need. So that's why a coffee chat is sometimes a lot better because it's a much more relaxed environment. But it also doesn't mean that you should get to a coffee chat and just think, you know what, I've got this in the bag. It's a coffee chat. They just want to see how much I want to earn, and then that's it. So that's very, very important that you remember that. Dudu says, what's the best way for preparing for psychometrics test or analysis? Now, this is actually quite a very, very important one. And thank you so much for actually asking this question, because I know somebody asked me this question a while ago and I forgot to actually respond. Now, guys, there is an easiest way of actually preparing for psychometrics. The easiest way is, we always say to people, please rest the day before. That is the first thing. First rule of psychometrics is rest enough the day before, because the mistake that people tend to make is they go online, go through these other extra tests to try and see if they can beat the test. Now, psychometrics are designed in such a way that beating it sometimes, in most cases, ends up working against you, because it ends up showing something that's not in your nature, that you wouldn't have wanted people to actually be aware of. So, best way to actually prepare for psychometrics, my brother, is just try and have enough rest, sleep the day before, drink enough water, and during the psychometrics, ask for a glass of water, sit with it, and go through that. It's the only way. There's no scientific way of actually preparing for them, because if I was to give you like the magic wand, unfortunately, it doesn't always work. So yeah, I would say just try and rest the day before. You will definitely normally nail some of these psychometrics. And then Olebren says, but being rude, it's not on. Yes, we must treat people with the same respect because they are human. That's it. And I fully agree. I think sometimes people get into this thing where it's like, I'm going for an interview, you're wasting my time, and they become rude, and then things just, it's not a nice thing to do. So if you can, be as gentle as humanly possible, but don't be rude to anybody, because it doesn't help anybody going forward. So please, guys, whatever you do, try and make sure that you are extra nice to people, because yeah, it doesn't help them. It doesn't do anything. And then Amanda says, I found that the coffee chat title doesn't carry the heaviness, and find candidates are more relaxed in the process. And that's true. The coffee chat discussion, it doesn't carry that scary feeling of, ooh, I'm going for an interview. It just brings in that element that says, no, it's just a quick chat. And that's why I'm saying it is still very important that you've done enough research. And the heaviness of an interview will then disappear, and you'll be able to nail that interview. So guys, remember, it is not out to try and scare you. The coffee chats are 90% of the time in your favor, because you can be more of yourself, but with a caution that says they're still assessing me. Okay. And then we've got Karabo. It's more general comment. Karabo's comment says, beware of these coffee chats. They can be technical interviews, so being prepared is critical. Yes, that's correct. It's also crucial to understand the context Did you apply or were you approached? These have different strategies, but being prepared is essential in all contexts. For some of you guys that might be wondering why I'm reading out some of the comments, is because part of this is going to be turned into an audio that I'll be saving into part of the podcast that we'll be working on. So you'll be able to actually listen to some of the podcasts. And as you know, when it's not a video podcast, it's very difficult for you to know what the comment was. If I just answer Karabo or I just say, oh yeah, I like Karabo's comment. So that's why we normally have where I get to try and read out some of these. And yes, my reading is not as smooth as it's supposed to be, but yeah, some of these things will be shared in our podcast going forward. And it's true from what Karabo was saying, they can sometimes be very technical interviews, but they won't bring them as technical interviews. They'll ask you sometimes very technical questions to try and assess one or two other things, but be prepared nonetheless, because it is very important that you're always prepared. And then psychometric psychs, first thing in the morning, quiet environment, and don't do it after a busy time because it's not a trick, but prep needed. And that's true. I always say to people, if you know that people are going to be walking in or knocking on your door or asking some this and that, I would say find a much more quieter place. First thing in the morning, before you start getting involved in the bulk of your work, just do them first thing in the morning, and you'll normally nail some of these psychometrics going forward. That is fantastic. And then Donald says, how should a proper CV look like? So I'll probably be doing another session about CVs where I'll also show you guys what the CV should actually look like. But the easiest answer for CVs that we normally say, there's quite a lot of platforms that you can use. I mean, Microsoft Word has got so many templates. They're not always the best. They're a bit ugly, and we've seen them all being used. The other platform that I've also advised people to actually use, guys, if you go to my YouTube page as well, you'll see one of the videos that I've got there. It's called canva.com. Canva's got some really nice platforms that you can actually use, and it can help you, shorten your CV to a 1 to 2 pages type of thing. Your CV should be simple enough that as a recruiter, when the recruiter looks at it, the first 30 seconds of it, they already can see the basic information that they're looking for. Your skills are very, very important in your CV, because some people will write all the information about what they're doing, but forget to write skills. Skills could be Java skill, whatever skill that you might have that you might want to highlight that are there. Also, the other nice thing about skills is that if people search for information, they are more likely to find information about your skills in there. Okay, let's see. Hello, Arnold. Arnold Maila is there. And then we have, obviously, Sibusiso is also asking the same thing. How should I prepare for a CV, for a call, for an interview call-up? Same thing. Try and go to my page, as I mentioned, guys. It's got a simple template that you can use on canva.com. So go there, download the templates on canva.com. You don't have to pay for the account. You can just use the free one. So you'll be able to actually create that, and then you can use that CV so you can actually take it to your interview. Delani Mpofu, let's see what Delani is saying. Guys, please ask as many questions as you can so that I can be able to answer as many of them as possible. Hi, Tshidi. I hope everyone joining is in good health. Yes, please. I hope everybody's in good health, guys. With regards to answering the question being asked and not answering what I hear, if I don't know the answer to the question being asked, would it not work to my advantage to perhaps state that although I might not have a definitive answer, going on and answer the question instead by closely relating it to something I do know, I'm familiar with, or is there a power in just saying, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question? There's a power in both, Delani. And this is how you can do it. So number one is, in most cases, you get asked the question, and in some cases, you've had the question, but you're not quite sure what they're asking for. It is okay to seek clarity. It's okay to say to them, sorry, when you said this, do you mean X, Y, Z? Because normally when you repeat somebody's question, if you got it wrong or you were not necessarily hearing what they were saying properly, they'll then rephrase it and actually help you, fix that that question properly. What's also very nice about always asking a question back is that it buys you time to think about the answer. Just the trick, it always works. And the other thing that I always say is when it comes to interviews, guys, always take the glass of water. Please take still water if you can, or the bottle of water, just take that. Because when they ask you a question that you're not quite sure of how to answer it, you take a sip. You just grab it, take a sip, you buy yourself a few seconds as you think about it, and then you answer the question. So that's the first way of doing it, Delani. The second way of actually doing it is also being able to say, based on the question, you might be asked a question that you haven't dealt with specifically in the industry, but you've had scenarios where it's similar to what they're asking, but not necessarily exactly the same. It is okay in that sense to say, I've heard exactly what you've now said. What I have done differently in a different project, then you explain what the project was. You say, this was the project that I was working on, and what I did differently was XYZ. Because that way, you're able to relate the question that they've asked you to the scenario that you've already done, and it's not necessarily exactly the same. Because sometimes you'll find that the company doesn't do the same thing that they're asking the questions about. So that's why it's very, very important that going forward, you make sure that you look at both. The other thing that I'm also going to say to you as well is that it is also very, very important to also know when you don't have an answer to a question, please don't go ahead and just hit the bush and go to the wrong direction. There is so much power in being able to say, sorry, I'm not quite familiar with a scenario like that. Maybe if you can rephrase it, then I can see if there's another scenario that I've got that's the same. There's so much power in also saying, sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. Lastly, the other thing before I forget, when it comes to being asked very difficult questions that you're not quite sure about, I always say to candidates, in every question that the panel asks you, there's also a lot of power in giving examples. Theoretical answers don't always work because a lot of people tend to make a mistake of just giving theory. If in my scenario, I'll do X. If I was in that scenario, I'll do that. No, give examples. And like you said, if you have an example that's almost similar to what they're asking for, give that example because there's so much power in being able to speak specifically about that example. And then unfortunately, sorry, the user that asked this question, as you can see, it just says LinkedIn user. How does an interview for an internal candidate normally look like? Would it be different from the external candidates? In most cases, it's very different. And the reason why it's sometimes different is because the question about tell me about yourself goes out of the window. Because in some cases, we already know what you've been doing. We already know you. So questions like tell me about yourself, tell me about a scenario where we would normally ask very specific questions about scenarios where the person has actually been part of that. So in some cases, you'll find that for internal candidates, the questions are very different. And in internal candidates, also sometimes you'll find that the questions are very, very specific. In some cases, they'll say, for example, there is a scenario in our team where that is happening. How would you deal with it? It's very, very specific and it's normally to the point because they know that you already know what they're talking about. So that's where the difference comes in from some of those aspects. And then Letero says, let me share Letero's question. It says, hi Tshidi, Letero Ntwani says, hi Tshidi, after a second interview, the company comes back asking for your payslip. What could that mean? It means nothing, my brother. To be honest, it means nothing. It just means that they're probably considering you either for the next round or they're checking if they can even afford you after the first round. I did a live stream last week, let's say that you might have missed, which speaks exactly about some of these things when it comes to pay slips. So please check it out. It speaks everything salary. It's a nice comprehensive video that I did. But normally payslip requests in some scenarios mean nothing. It just means that sometimes they're assessing to see if they can still afford you if they take you for the next round. And if they can't afford you, they'll also let you know. In some cases, they'll let you know. In some cases, they don't. Woohoo! There is a comment that's coming from YouTube. Mpumelelo, thank you, man. You just made my day. You just made my day. Fantastic. Now, let's go to Pomolo. Pomolo Sisini. Pomolo says, kindly assist. When they ask if I have any questions before the interview ends, how do I tackle this? Pomolo, I'm so glad you asked this question. So, shameless plug. Guys, I've got a very, very good video where I've done top 10 questions to ask at the end of every job interview. if you go to my YouTube page or even on my LinkedIn page, there's that part where it speaks about, it speaks about featured. If you scroll through featured, you'll see one of the videos that I've done. It literally addresses the question about what are the questions that you can ask at the end of every interview. So please do ask, go check it out. I'll link it in the video below. So the video that you guys are watching now, I'll make sure that I link that so that you can actually check it out. But yes, it's a very nice comprehensive video. And what's also very good is that I've even pasted the questions themselves so that you can save them for yourself and use them for any scenario that you're in. They work for anything. They work for any scenario they throw at you. They'll be perfect for that. Amanda, thank you so much for being so engaging in this live discussion. Guys, if you have any questions, we're 30 minutes in. I would love to try and finish the stream in the next 10 minutes. So if you have any more questions, please do ask as many possible. Not always when preparing. I think it's also best to prepare fully as it's an external. And the advantage is that you, the internal, so easily you are the internal. So easier when doing research. So don't take it for granted. And that's true. I think the other mistake that I've seen is, and this has happened before in the past, where we've had external candidates and internal candidates applying for a job. And the external candidate comes so prepared for the job that we end up offering the external candidate because the internal candidate just thought, you know what, I've got this job, I'm sorted. Hey, you know, what can I say? I'm not going to do enough research. And you have the access to the data already internally. So please, if you can, do as much research as possible, even though you're internal. Because the nice thing about being internal is that you can go speak to the people doing the job. You know, it makes your job a lot easier when it comes to research. Go ask questions to those people that are doing the job already. So don't just sit back and just think, yeah, no, I'm internal, you know, I got this. It's just, no, do as much research as possible, because most cases you'll find that external candidates are a lot more prepared than internal candidates. And then the company offers the external, and then the internal candidate gets angry because they're like, you know, you're giving only external people the opportunities, but you were not prepared in that interview. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this one, guys, is that it's coming from my YouTube page. So I just had to share that. Just, you know, shameless plug. Like I said, check out my YouTube, guys. It's got literally all these videos that I keep on speaking about. So please check it out. And thank you for having some of the questions coming through. And then I asked for payslips at the start of the process, as I don't want to waste anyone's time. And it can also afford them, to see if I can also afford them. One of the statements that I think we forgot to mention about companies asking for payslips. So in Europe, guys, we don't ask for payslips. So we don't normally ask to say, can you share your payslip with us? However, in South Africa, I do know that it's a common thing that companies will ask for payslip. Now, there's a few other reasons why companies ask for payslip besides what Amanda's saying, which is to say, we don't want to waste your time if we can't afford you. One of the other reasons that the payslips in South Africa, or some of the companies in South Africa, are so complex that it's sometimes very, very important that, you know, the total rewards team are able to look at it and understand what else the company pays to you that might not necessarily come out as a total pay. I gave an example about the Mercedes-Benz guy that we offered the role, where on paper the payslip looked very good, only to find that actually he was driving a car that was worth 15,000. So we have to factor some of these things into that. So please go check out that video. I did it last week Tuesday, so you'll be able to actually check it out to see what it says. How can I answer the question about salary expectations without shooting myself in the foot? Hosiame, that awesome video that I'm just talking about, it's got this exact same one. It is fantastic. It gives you a lot more detailed information. But I see Amanda is also just give a range if you're not sure about what you want, and always make sure that this is based on the net, as in the take home. Take home is very important, because when they start doing all those deductions, guys, you know, your take home becomes very, very bad sometimes. And in last week's question, is somebody said, how do I ask for, like, what's the percentage increase? I said to them, always ask for at least 10% and above on net, and not necessarily on cost to company, because on net it then helps you quite a bit. Tepotlongwane says, is it advisable to call a recruiter to ask if they've secured a date, if they've indicated that they're going to set up a second interview? Yes, it is perfectly fine. I always say after 2 to 3 days, then you can ask, call them or email them to say, hey, listen, have you secured a date yet? Because I need to sometimes schedule my time around because I'm working on specific projects. So it is. Sometimes you might not necessarily have the contact number. Just email them to say, hey, listen, I just wanted to follow up on that second interview. Is it still happening? If it's not, and also because it's very reasonable that you're asking that question, because if you might want to start looking for other opportunities, then they need to let you know so that you don't waste time waiting for them. Yep. The other thing is the way the package is built up is very, very important. And Donald says, thanks for the content, my brother. So yeah, guys, I think, like I said, I'm going to do one or two other more questions, and then we can actually close this live stream. But like I said, please feel free to go check it out on my YouTube page, because this live stream will be saved on my YouTube page. So you can be able to actually check it out and be able to see what it says. Now, the question from Tabo says, how do I compose a short message to go with the CV while sharing it with a potential employer seeking an opportunity that is not advertised? Ooh, that's a nice one. So basically looking at a slide cover letter. I think, Tabo, what will be very, very important with this one is, and remember guys, I'm trying to answer this on the fly, so I haven't yet prepared specifically for this one. I would say the best way to actually deal with a short message is, number one is identify what you think the company needs, not necessarily what you just want to go do. Just go through their jobs and say, okay, what does this company need? It needs 1, 2, 3. So if you were to send a CV, let's say, for example, Tabo is a developer or Tabo is a sales and marketing person, and you reach out to the company that I work for and you want to make sure that you check if there's an opportunity in that particular space and you want to have an accompanying message that goes out. This is how I'll draft it. I'll say, hello, Tshidi. I wanted to actually speak to you about role X. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I know your company is always looking for these type of skills. My background is I was able to do X, Y, Z. I've been able to deliver this, that in the last couple of years. And in the deliveries that I've done, I've managed to save the company this, that. I've managed to transform this project into that project. I was able to bring in this innovation that's able to bring this to this and that to the company. The reason why you do that, guys, is that people need to see what value you bring to them as well. Especially if there's no job that's advertised, they want to see what also you bring to the table. So that's why you then highlight exactly what you bring to the table in that message. So it's a short little message to say, I'm so and so, I've got this background. I know you don't have a job that's advertised. This is what I've done for my current company or for my previous company. This is what I was able to bring. This is the project that I was able to close, especially if it's out on the public domain. And this is what I was able to do. That way, already when they reach out to you, they know what you bring to the table, what you can do, and then it makes things easier. Tabu, we can discuss this further a bit later, but yeah, thanks for that particular question. And the question about, is it advisable to reach out to a recruiter on LinkedIn introducing yourself after applying for a post? Yes, it still works. Now, I've also, once again, got a video about how to reach out to a recruiter on LinkedIn. So please check it out, because I even have the little comments that you can use to actually reach out to the recruiter. So yes, please do that. And then Amanda says, I find that LinkedIn sometimes always a good place to meet line managers in that field. Sell yourself and value add. Yes, that is correct. So that's one of the nicest things that you can get. Last question is from Kabisi, guys. Kabisi says, how do you respond to this interview question? How do you manage mental wellness? It baffled me the last time. Okay, so one of the things that I think recruiters do or managers do is, it's a very, very beautiful question, and I'm glad that they're actually asking you that question, because it tells me that that company takes mental health seriously. Now, the best way to actually answer that is, in some cases, they're trying to find out what do you do to de-stress when you're actually stressed. So it's a tricky way of asking you the same question to say, how do you de-stress in a scenario like this? Or how do you deal with mental wellness? How do you take the steam off your brain? Because guys, mental health is one of the topics that we don't speak a lot about, especially as recruiters or as line managers. We don't put systems in place when it comes to some of these things. And one of the things, Kabisi, that you could be doing is you could play chess. Some of us are photographers. That's what I do to deal with, stress from work. Some of us also, like, I do these streams where I do a lot of research on the stream. For me, doing research about what I'm going to talk about in a stream is a lot more therapeutic. So that's another way of actually doing it. So I would say that's how you actually deal with the Kabisi, is to say, share with them what you do to de-stress. That's all they're asking. It sounds like a trick question, but it's a simple question to say, how do you deal with mental health, mental wellness? And it's about how do you just take away that steam? Because guys, more and more companies to talk about mental health, and then we're able to actually deal with everything. Now, I think that was the last question that I've got. And then Amanda says, I exercise, I play sport, I do things outside of work. I love this. I'm so glad they asked you that question. And if a company asks you that question, but by all means, that might be a very, very good company to work for. Thank you so much once again, guys. Top of the morning with Tshidi, and apologies for the delay in the live stream. As I mentioned, something happened in my stream where I couldn't actually go live with the platform that I had created, but I was able to obviously make another way of actually responding. Once again, let's share the comments, send me messages. Let's hear what you guys have got. I hope today the sound was a bit better, because last week was a bit too low. And once again, top of the morning with Tshidi. Looking forward to having you guys join us until the next video. Until next time. Cheers. Don't forget to check my YouTube page.